My name is Veronica Chapa-Gorczynski, and I'm the chair of the Memorial Park Conservancy Board of Directors. Welcome. So this annual event is a chance to celebrate the previous year's accomplishments, share updates on our current and future projects happening in the park, and to thank you. Without you and your support, these transformational changes seen in the park would just not have been possible. So many of you have been on the exciting journey with us, and in doing so, have helped elevate Houston, both locally, nationally, and internationally. At 1,500 acres at the heart of Houston, Memorial Park is the city's largest urban park. Its size, central location, role as a wilderness park, and cultural history make Memorial Park unique, both locally and nationally. The park is also unique in that its landscape is just as diverse as those who visit. So whether you come to the park to exercise, enjoy a picnic with your family, or rest and recharge, Memorial Park is your park. So I would like to acknowledge the elected officials joining us today and want to thank you for your public service, but also want to thank you for your commitment to green spaces and investments in infrastructure. From Precinct 4, Commissioner Briones' office, my friend Luis Guajardo. Luis, are you here just yet? Okay, that's okay. We'll call him out when he walks in the middle of Shelley's presentation. Fair enough? Additionally, I got to give him a hug. Councilmember Robert Gallegos, we're so grateful for your leadership, and thank you so much for being here. Sally Alcorn, who I wouldn't be surprised, Councilmember Sally Alcorn, who runs at the park almost daily. We're so grateful to have you. And Councilmember Letitia Plummer, I didn't get to give you a hug today, but I heard that she's on her way as well, so we want to thank her and acknowledge her leadership. So with that, we want to thank you for what you're doing as elected officials and leaders for parks and green spaces in Houston. It's going to be really important as we get into this next 8 to 10 years. So now the person that you really want to hear from, I would like to welcome Shelley Arnold, President and CEO of Memorial Park Conservancy, to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll join me in welcoming Shelley. So I'm gonna put her on the spot.
Uh-oh.
And tell her how appreciative we are for her leadership. If you could join me in giving her a round of applause for everything this lady's done. You're awesome, and we are grateful for you.
And we are very lucky to have you. And I'm gonna give this mic to you because I'm actually mic'd here for. Oh, here. Thank you. I think you gotta turn it on. Okay. Can you all hear me? All right. First, I need to get my slide advancer. Do we know where that is? You probably gave it to me. That was a bad idea. I will take another one. If you have another one, I would love it. Oh, thank you. Here it comes. I want to start this presentation off with the question that's probably on all of your minds, which is it going to, sorry, is this going to happen again? Is this what's happening now? What happened in 2010, 11, 12, is this happening now? And the answer is no. The answer is it is not happening now. We have planned and we have planted for this reason, for sustainability, for resiliency in the face of droughts, of hurricanes, of freezes. And so if you think about even the freeze that we had a few years ago, Uri, in Eastern Glades, we had just opened Eastern Glades. Uri, we didn't have any problem with the plants freezing. It was the pipes and all the human things that we built that we had problems with. So this is not happening again. Some trees are in distress, but we've planted a prairie. We've planted native plants. We've planted plants that are resilient in the face of all of these natural occurrences, unfortunately, these natural disturbances. And so I just want to reassure you that what you think you might be seeing is not what you're actually seeing in the park right now. So please tell everyone, this is the most common question we get from media and others these days, and people have a lot of fear. And so with that said, let me cue up a video, and I'd like to invite you to join me on a journey in Memorial Park this morning. And it's coming. Here we go. The question is, how did we get from there, where we had these headlines? These headlines were all over the city. How did we get from there to here, and here, here, and here in just a few short years? These are the headlines now. When we opened the Kinder Land Bridge in Sivia and Melvin Wolf Prairie, we got national coverage. It was quite incredible. We got an incredible amount of local coverage and national coverage. This was an article from Fast Company. And just a couple of weeks ago, this article was published in a magazine, an online magazine called Dezeen. And Dezeen is based in London. It has 3 million readers, and it is one of the, if not the premier design and architectural online magazine. And so 3 million people across the world know what we're doing in Houston, and I applaud you all for this. I mean, this is just a great development. So we're starting to get, with the work that we're doing, really a different view of Houston, a view of Houston in forward thinking, in a way that is innovative, in a way that is leading, and that's what we want for our city. And so this is called the nature of innovation. The word innovation comes from a Latin word, innovare, and that means to make new. And so how did we get from there, the drought, to here, where we are today, to where we are going? And it was through thinking differently, thinking anew, thinking about systems, thinking not just about projects and improvements, but thinking about elevating Memorial Park, about elevating park users' lives, about elevating our city, thinking in very innovative ways. So today I want to talk about the innovative ways that we approached, and this is a big tent we. I'm standing here representing all of you in this room and so many people beyond, our project partners at the City of Houston, at the Parks Department, at the Mayor's Office, at the Kinder Foundation, at Uptown Houston, our volunteers, my board of directors, my staff, our donors, our volunteers that work in the park. Many of you are here, but all of you have played a role. And I'm not going to talk a lot about the master planning process itself because so many of you have heard that and so many of you know about that. But this is one of the most impressive slides out of our master plan that City Council passed unanimously in 2015. This slide shows you how many people participated in that process. It was inclusive, it was embracing, it was deep, it was expansive, and it included all of these people. And all of these organizations. And so, that was the first step in innovation, was how embracing and inclusive this plan was. And in fact, when City Council passed this plan, they said it was the most, and Jack Christie's here, former council member Christie's here, and was one of the strong supporters, as are all the City Council members in this room today, and Commissioner Briones' staff. But when City Council passed this, they said it was the most innovative, really the best planning that they had ever seen. And it was a new bar. We were setting a new bar. And so it passed unanimously, which doesn't really happen. And again, how did that happen? Why did that happen? It was the planning process itself. And the design firm Nelson Bird Wiltz has actually won awards for the planning process itself. That's how unique it was. And we think in terms of systems, and we look backwards to look forwards. And so featured on the screen, I'm sorry, I'm looking down here, but featured on the screen is our master plan leader, Thomas Waltz, talking about looking backwards to look forward, looking at history to look forward, looking at cultural history, looking at ecological history. And so today I wanted to focus on 5 areas that I thought you really haven't heard a lot about probably. In terms of the park and the planning, what's unique. So I hope that you walk away today with an understanding of what is unique about what we're doing. And these are 5. There are more, but these are 5 of the categories. How we handled the space, how we handled the questions related to hydrology and optimizing for Houston, how we seek to improve biodiversity, and we believe it's already happening. The soils, that was a big challenge and a big opportunity for us. And then the land and the people. And I put land and people here without a space because I wanted you to understand that the land and the people in a public space are inextricably linked. You can't separate one from the other. And so the space, so starting with the space is constrained. And so the map that you're seeing shows Memorial Park and the boundaries of the space. The space is constrained on the south by Buffalo Bayou, on the north by I-10, on the west by 610, and on the east by neighborhoods. So we have a park that is in greater and greater demand, and we have a city that's growing. And today is 4 million. I don't know the number for 2050, but it's probably 10 times that. We need public space. And we can't grow this 1,500-acre park anymore. And so we had to think very creatively about how to gain access to more of the space. And over time, the space had become subdivided into 25 different pieces. And so this park that is twice as big as Central Park felt small in some senses. And people didn't have access to different spaces. And it was really different pieces of degrading ecology and degrading habitat, so sub-optimized from an ecological perspective as well. And so one of the key foundational ways of thinking for us was joining the space back together. How can we join the space back together and effectively get more space? So the 2 projects that I'm going to talk about most today in reference to this and all the other points are the 100-acre Clay Family Eastern Glades project and the 100-acre Kinder Land Bridge and Sivia and Melvin Wolf Prairie project. Each of these, as I mentioned, 100 acres, but most cities don't have a 100-acre park. 100 acres would be the 10th largest park in Houston, as I understand it, Kenneth. And so we have 2 100-acre projects that really were, that facilitated and were born of this concept of the space. And so the 10-year plan provides for acceleration of the master plan projects that we agreed to in 2015 with Houston City Council and the input of over 3,000 Houstonians and all of those people that were listed on the page that I showed you. And the 2 projects that we'll focus most on are the one to your left, which is the Eastern Glades, and then the one right in the middle, the yellow one right in the middle, with the pieces above it and below it, which are the Kinder Land Bridge and Sivia and Melvin Wolf Prairie. And so next we move to hydrology. Hydrology is something that we have to consider in Houston. Right now we're in a drought, but we are regularly ravaged with floods. We've all experienced this. This Buffalo Bayou is the southern border of Memorial Park. And what you're looking at in the background is downtown, and on the left side is the park. And so when it rains, when it rains hard, millions of gallons of stormwater rush down towards the bayou. They rush from the north side of the park, I-10 side, and they rush through these ravines. They rush down to the bayou. And in doing that, they take silt and pollutants. They take just edges of the bayou soil. Since I've been there, we've lost dozens of feet off the edge of the bayou in different places. And it ends up here. This is Buffalo Bayou Park. So thanks to Ann Olson and team for sending this over. Here's where that silt ends up. This is after Hurricane Harvey. This was about 15 feet of silt that landed from Memorial Park in Buffalo Bayou Park. It was horrifying. And if you look back on the picture on your left, you can see a piece of equipment in the back. That's how big these piles were. I biked down there and saw this. It was shocking. So how could we be better stewards for the city? How could Memorial Park be a better green sponge? That's how you think in terms of systems. And so when I talk about systems, thinking in terms of systems is actually one of the big innovations of this project itself. We approach it holistically, not a project boundary, not the Clay Family Eastern Glades as a singular project. We approach it thinking more holistically. Same with the Kinder Land Bridge and Sivia and Melvin Wolf Prairie. So this is the hydrology mapping of the park prior to our work. It's where these drainage fingers come down. And so 2 of our projects, those 2, capture significant amounts of water from these kind of, instead of flowing straight down to Buffalo Bayou, capture the water from these drainage fingers. And this is the edge of the park. What you're seeing in the circle is the Crestwood area with Clay Family Eastern Glades. So the neighbors, Crestwood, Camp Logan, are the little squares. And then Clay Family Eastern Glades is where the circle is. And so the water, this is showing before the project how the water flows from the park into the neighborhoods. So we studied that. And so when Harvey hit, the Uptown Houston had actually dug 1 acre of the 5-acre Hines Lake, which is now the 5-acre Hines Lake today. And the neighbors told us that they think it prevented them from flooding, which is really great. We'll never know if that's true, but that's a really big contribution before the project even opened. And so now we have the 5-acre lake. We have a 3-tiered system. So this is Hines Lake, Clay Family, Eastern Glades. We have a 3-tiered system of stormwater management. We have the lake itself, which captures water and holds it on site instead of sending it rushing down to Buffalo Bayou. We also have storm rain gardens. So when water, if you see any building, you see the pavilion in the background, the picnic pavilion. Stormwater runs off of the roof of that building into rain gardens where it is captured in the soils and held by the roots and the plants. And if it overflows into the lake. And then we have the swales. If those of you go to Eastern Glades and you park, you notice that there are these big plantings, and those are drainage swales. And those are designed geometrically and with plantings and soils to slow the water down to hold it. And if it overflows, it rushes into the lake, where it's cleansed by the wetlands here on the edge of the lake. So that's a multi-tiered system that also serves as habitat. It's just beautiful, and it's so enjoyable for people. And I put this in here to show you that what you see on the left was Eastern Glades after the drought. It was a degrading ecology. What you see on the right is Eastern Glades now. And so look at that improvement. You can feel proud of that improvement. Hydrology related to the land bridge and prairie. So what you're looking at on the left is basically the yellow part is the watershed. It's what the water that's captured in this area. So just so you know what you're looking at, Memorial Drive runs east and west. And so the water that was captured in the site previously is down below. And then the railroad tracks run north and south. And so this is a particular area where the land bridge and prairie was going to go. So when we studied hydrology, you look at the image on the right, that image reveals what we could do, the stormwater we could capture. We expand the watershed, we capture the stormwater and take it down to the prairie and hold it in the prairie. And so it's a much more robust system. The park is working better in terms of holding stormwater for the city. And so that happened based on digging these 10-foot deep, I'd say they're prairie. It's what's prairie now. And so what you see here is the dig, and you see the coyote prints. Actually, the coyotes couldn't wait for the land bridges to be built. Every time we went up on the land bridge during construction, we found coyote prints. And so we dug down, first of all, 10 feet down, and then we also channeled the water. So this is an example of a channel that we created to bring the water where we wanted it to go, which is into the prairie. Then we planted for holding the water on site. So prairie plants have these tremendously deep roots, and so they hold the water better than any other kind of planting. And I mean, this is just such an impressive photo to me. And this is what's happening. Like, you may see tiny little plants right now in some of the areas of the prairie where they're planted. They're shooting all their energy into building those 10, 12, even 15 foot down root system, and that holds water. And that also sequesters more carbon. That was the native habitat and ecology of the Gulf Coast, of Memorial Park. And there's less than 1% of that left today. And so by planting the prairie, we create this stormwater management system. We create greater plant resiliency as well. And so I started by talking about the drought. The prairie's doing just fine, and that's because it's resilient. It will come back. The other thing we had to consider is how to get the water across Memorial Drive. So we have the reality with the land bridges of Memorial Drive still. And so we built this culvert underneath Memorial Drive. And most of you probably don't know about this because you just drive right over it. But it runs perpendicular to the land bridge. So to go back again, it runs underneath, perpendicular. And what's interesting about it, it's actually as long as one of the shorter land bridge tunnel, and it serves wildlife. And so we had to design it to serve wildlife. So we call it a critter crossing. And we had to put light wells. We consulted. This was one of our consulting ecology people. We consulted with many folks, and I think one of them was Texas Parks and Wildlife, or our urban biologist, perhaps, and put light wells inside. And we put a shelving inside, and that allows for animals to go through without running through the muck if some want to do that. And I went in there the other day because I wanted to check it out. And people ask me all the time, are animals using this? Are animals using this? And we're going to put cameras up to know that with certainty. But I went in just to see, and I found paw prints everywhere, and then I found a snake skin. So yes, the answer is it is serving water and wildlife. So that's kind of cool. And this is what you get. This beautiful, resilient, habitat-friendly, attracting biodiversity prairie. And so this was a picture, I think, in the spring, and it looks different all times of year. So that's the hydrology story. And so just stepping back, when you hear about other land bridges, it's great. Other cities are doing land bridges. They're usually doing them to connect major spaces for people or animals or both. Sometimes they're just wildlife bridges. They're bridges. They're an overpass. What I'm sharing with you is why this, like our work together, these projects are highly unique. Nationally, globally, no one seems to have seen anything else like what we've done here in Houston. So the soils is a big part of the story. So we started, this is a picture of Memorial Drive, where the ball fields used to be south of Memorial Drive, where the land bridge and prairie are today. So the picture on your, I can't do this part, but the one, it has the ball fields in it. And that's the one from before. And you can see south of Memorial Drive, there's ball fields, there's parking lot, there's roadway. The trees that you're seeing were in distress, degrading, and not really high functioning for habitat. What you see on the right is a rendering of the land bridge and prairie, the future land bridge and prairie. The important point of this is that I told you we were wanting to build the land bridge tunnels and the land bridges themselves over the tunnels. We had to take the soil out from the site, and the soil was chemically treated and it was compacted. It wouldn't really sustain life, plant life. And so we had, real quality problems with the soil and then quantity problems with the soil. Where we determined we needed 500,000 cubic yards of soil. That was not available commercially to us. And if it had been, we would have a real hard time trucking it across Houston. I'm going to go here. In fact, we would have had to bring in 61,500 trucks across Houston. I mentioned that earlier, but imagine that. And so this is a cross-section of what it looked like as we were thinking about building and planning and designing. You can see the tunnels and just look how much soil, and it's wide. And so it's a tremendous amount of soil. And so we sourced it from on site. We started with the lake. And so the cross-functional, cross-organizational team came up with this brilliant idea of taking the soil from the lake and storing it on near Memorial Drive. So some of you saw those piles for a long time and wondered what they were, and beginning to treat it from a quality perspective. But the question was, well, we're going to have to haul 100 trucks a day. How do we do that without disturbing the thousands of users a day on the Seymour-Lieberman Trail? And so the sequencing of projects was also an innovation. The team realized that the Astros Golf Foundation was building, in the city of Houston, the Parks Department, was building the new golf course at that time. So would they let us use the golf course as a haul route, because they'd torn the golf course up anyway, and they did. So thank you to them. And we were able to avert disturbing all of the users of the Seymour-Lieberman Trail. And then the next question related to the mix of the soils. So if you remember the picture I just showed with all that soil going on top of the tunnels, without the right mix of soil, we could crush the tunnels when it rained. The weight of the soil would crush the tunnels. We also had to make sure that we coated the tunnels with the right kind of soil mix so that it would keep water out. So there were lots of considerations, and of course the topsoil mix. So we were told, we did these are borings. We did soil samples and borings all over this area to see if we had the right kinds of soils. And we were told that we didn't. And it was unfortunate. We were told we were going to have to go out and get some of the soil or a lot of the soil. And that was unfortunate and kind of unacceptable, because it was a problem. And our really good team, so having the best talent, I can say this, I was not on this team. I do these things. I don't plan these projects. I'm so amazed with a group of people, many of whom are here today, that planned this project. And they just said, no, we don't accept that answer. Go back and try it again. Go back and try it again. And our wonderful general contractor at Tellefson and our engineers at Gunda, everybody went back and tried it again. And they did find the right mix. And that was actually a eureka moment. I remember everyone was incredibly excited about that, because this also saves tons of money, by the way. But it allowed the project to continue on pace, on plan, and it was really very exciting. And then the other question, kind of from a quality perspective, is these soils, as I mentioned, can't really sustain life. Even the ones that weren't in the ball field, even the ones that were just supporting trees, they're not healthy. They weren't healthy. They weren't structurally sound. They weren't healthy. And so we had to figure out how to get topsoil that would grow plants, that would grow well. And we had a composting operation that we started with the drought. We and the Parks Department took 40,000 trees and put them back in this area that you're seeing, the big hole in the middle. And it was in the middle of the forest that had opened up because of the drought. It was turning itself into a prairie or a savanna. And we put the trees back there, and then we composted them, which is really, many of you know, a scientific operation. So we composted them, and we used these trees to create topsoil and enrich topsoil. We used them in Eastern Glades, and then we used some in the land bridge and prairie as well. And then we kept this operation going. And this is another innovation. We're told that nothing like this exists in any other urban park in the US, at least at this scale. And so we keep it going and we keep using it because we have invasive trees that come out, and we do have trees that die that come out. But this is a really itself innovation. And so we've talked about space, and we've talked about biodiversity. I mean, we've talked about hydrology, we've talked about soils. Biodiversity is another area. And again, this is all systems thinking. So you think holistically. How do you increase the number of species that live or visit the park, that live in or visit the park? And that's a good thing. Biodiversity is a good thing. Biodiversity helps with agriculture. Biodiversity helps with human survival and human health. So it's a very desirable quality to have the most biodiversity you can have in a particular site. And we knew that if we planted the right things and created the right habitats, we would be able to attract the new species of animals. And so we did a study back in 2016. We spent $300,000, this is the royal we, to do a study of what lives in the park, what lives in the trees and the soils and the grasses, and really every inch of Memorial Park. And this study yielded a really interesting and important finding. And that was that these turtles, called alligator snapping turtles, live in Memorial Park. They live in the bios. You never see them. Scientists, ecology folks thought that they were not extinct, but just not really present anymore in Buffalo Bio. They had been poached and hunted. And so we found 4 of them, and one of them is the turtle that you see, the big one. My mom, who's here today, it's her birthday today, calls it Logan. And so we named it Logan. The research team named it Logan. So things kind of come full circle sometimes, because here's Logan. And more importantly, this work contributed to significant research that is still ongoing. It's a 10-year study now of these animals that's going on, led by the Turtle Survival Alliance. And there are publications after publications after publications now that feature Memorial Park, and they found over 100 last time I checked, which was about a year ago. They radio, they track, they report, and it's a really interesting story that now is having impact across the U.S. in terms of research and in terms of science. We also found, so this is an example of an observational improvement in biodiversity, not a scientifically tracked and measured yet. But in Clay Family Eastern Glades, right when we built the lake and planted the lake with the wetlands habitat around the edge, this nesting pair of least grebes came. That's these birds. Least grebes don't come to Houston. They don't live in Houston. They live in South Texas. They never come into the city. And immediately this pair moved in, had babies, and keeps having babies. And so when you go to Eastern Glades and you see they look like tiny ducks. You think they're baby ducks. You can't really see the eyes unless you're right up close. They have these yellow eyes, and their babies sound like little chickens. That's these least grebes. And so they've come back and had more babies. It's really cool. And of course, what we've planted and built attracts families of all kinds. These are bird species and bird families. It attracts species of all kinds. And we're going to go back and actually measure it soon so that we know formally and scientifically how we've affected the biodiversity. We welcome all families. And people, we have seen so many new users in Memorial Park since Eastern Glades opened up in 2020, right in the beginning of the pandemic, but at a time when people were so stressed, and they found joy here. They found peace, they found connection, they found safety. This was the picture with the stroller was when I was there on opening day. We couldn't have a party, we couldn't have a big celebration because it was July of 2020. And so we just didn't tell anyone, and we let the fences down. And this family was the first family in. They're from Colombia. It was a mother and her 2 children. And it was beautiful. She moved back to Houston to be by Memorial Park. And then she had just moved back, taking her kids to the park for the first time, and this happens. And so she's the first one in with her kids. And they stayed for hours, and they had so much fun. And they came, I was there when they left, and they came out, and the boy was playing with a stick, and it was just so moving to know that this boy was going to grow up in this space and be profoundly impacted by his experience, and his children and everyone else that comes to this magical place that is Memorial Park. You don't have better career experiences than this. Also, in the prairie, so that was Eastern Glades. In the prairie, we don't know the impact of the biodiversity yet because it's very early. But these are some of the animals that we've been seeing, some of the insects, some of the animals. And the list down the middle is not intended for you to read. It was just to show you that when we first were planning, we estimated that based on the plantings that we were doing, we could have 15 to 20 more species of birds, which actually represented about a 25% increase. We could have more reptiles, more amphibians. And so we'll go back in a few years and we'll track that as well, just like we're getting ready to track Eastern Glades. And the plantings themselves are biodiversity. So we do new plantings. We do native plantings that had vanished from the park. We bring them back to the park. This was the prairie in spring. Some of you might remember it was beautiful. It was yellow and purple flowers everywhere. And actually, this is the planting palette. This is a design of the planting palette. And the 4 quadrants you'll see are the fall, the seasons, the 4 seasons. And so it's really cool that Houston will now have 4 seasons in the prairie. And so thank you, donors. Thank you, project partners, Kinder Foundation, Civvy and Melvin Wolf. Thank you for bringing 4 seasons to Houston. We can now celebrate that. Finally, the land and the people. That's such an exciting part of our story and of our innovations, really stepping back to think about and look at who has been here, what were their effects on Memorial Park, why did they even come? Anytime that we are here, we have an effect. And so looking back at the land and the people and looking at the interplay between people and the land and the ecology and then the cultural piece. And so thank you to my friend Jaime Gonzalez. There he is, I see him. We work very closely with Jaime at the Nature Conservancy. This is a map of the first peoples. And Texas is, you can see Texas kind of down in the green, the Gulf Coast. The Karankawa people were the first peoples here. And they managed through controlled burns. And so they came and they found a prairie, and they managed that prairie through controlled burns to meet their needs. And then we have to know that to ask, well, what can we learn from that? What can we do with that information? And then the cowboys came, and I've learned these things from Jaime. Why did the cowboys come? The cowboys came to manage the prairie. They also came because of the resource of the prairie. And if you think about Houston and Texas, that is the rodeo, that's such an important part of who we are as a culture. Today, it's so important. And it started because they came to manage a prairie. The other folks that came shortly thereafter, there was a pine logging operation in Memorial Park, and that's why we have the pine forest in the 1800s. There was a brick kiln. Occasionally we find bricks around the park. Then Camp Logan. So in 1917, a military training camp was constructed in Memorial Park. So what you're seeing is part of the overlay of the tents and some of the facilities. The camp actually was 7,000 acres, not contiguous, across Greater Houston. The Memorial Park part was 3,500 contiguous acres. And 1,500, to remind you, 1,500 acres is how big we are now. So it extended beyond the footprint of what is Memorial Park today. But there were 70,000 soldiers that came through Camp Logan. There were 30 at any given time. What you're seeing, the circle, is a button that we just found in Memorial Park during our archaeological research. And this is from a soldier's jacket. So 30,000 people, 30,000 soldiers. That was about 10% of Houston's population at that time. They were an integral part of Houston's community, of the economy, of the society. They were really an important part of Houston. And there are thousands of postcards that tell the stories of Camp Logan. And that's how we know a lot of the stories today. It's from letters and from postcards and from some of the descendants of some of the folks that were here. And there were stories of great heroism associated with Camp Logan. There were stories of great tragedy associated with Camp Logan. One of the reasons that you don't know much about Camp Logan, it was a source of great pride for the city until the Houston Mutiny and riots, and I put them in air quotes because they weren't mutiny or riots. It's a story of great racial injustice and tragedy. When that happened, everybody stopped talking about Camp Logan. It became a source of shame. And so and we weren't alone in the nation in these kinds of terrible racial incidents happening. It was the 1917, 18, 19, 20, 21 timeframe, Tulsa, St. Louis. There were terrible situations that happened, and situation is not the right word. But what can we learn from this? These are the kinds of stories we will tell in our work, the stories of heroism, of why this was important for Houston and the nation. And we will also tell this story so that people understand and can learn. We can all learn together. And so the people, fast forwarding. So Memorial Park develops. You all know it and love it. So many people come and enjoy it. And then there's the drivers. There are 55,000 drivers that drive on Memorial Drive through the park every day, 55,000 cars. And so what do we do about that during construction? We don't want to disrupt traffic flow. The road needed to be rebuilt. And so what do we do about this? Well, together, we decided to move the road. Again, systems thinking. Move the road, don't disrupt the traffic. And then what? What about that road? Our master planner thought, Thomas Waltz, I showed you, and his team, and then the overall project team, thought, well, wouldn't that be cool to somehow use the road in the project? It was going to be buried. The road was just going to be buried. That's not a great thing for the ecology. So what if we use the road? So these are sections of the roadway. And if you can't really see them, but they're really beautiful up close. They look like terrazzo tile, the cuts on the side. What if we created what is now the Emily Clay Family Scramble? What if we did something cool and made the road in service to the park instead of the park being in service to the road? And what a great statement for Houston. And this, I have to say, is an iconic feature in the park that people just love. They just love it. Place of selfies, place of proposals. It's just a really wonderful place. And I put this picture in just because it's beautiful. You can also see Emily Clay Family Scramble, but this is a picture from our friends at Houston First and David Mintzberg's team. And they are telling our stories. They are going across, working, sharing our stories with different countries, sharing our stories with incoming visitors. And we want people to know the new Houston, the emerging Houston, the good Houston from the past and the great Houston from the future. They're telling our stories. This was the ribbon cutting for the Kinderland Bridge in Sivia and Melvin Wolf Prairie. And it was a beautiful moment, a beautiful day. I show you this picture to show how many people were there, How many people were involved? How many people were invited? We also had a bald eagle fly overhead and land. We thought that was very significant and telling. And so we'll talk about what's coming up next. Let me actually show you what's coming up next. So mark your calendars. Can I get this back? November 4th, we will be opening the timing track, the Cullen timing track, the long-awaited. It'll be very exciting. And we invite you to join us on November 4th. It's a Saturday. We'll also be opening the event plaza. So this is a place, tell all your friends, where you can have corporate events, weddings, special celebrations. It's in the same running complex. So these are 2 of the 3 features that will be opening on November 4th of the running complex. And then we have the cafe that will be opening in the first quarter of next year. And so we'll have a new place to eat, a new place to enjoy, a new place to commune and socialize. Just so you see where we are in the big picture, the top projects are what we've already opened. And then what's next is listed below. So I mentioned the running complex. There's a whole bunch of trail systems that are coming up and that we're working on, our project partners are working on in the background. And I want to commend and thank Commissioner Briones' team and the Houston Parks Board and many other foundations and donors for helping it will be made real, the connection between Buffalo Biopark and Memorial Park. It is not completely taken care of and completely funded and completely designed, but we took a major step forward 2 weeks ago, and that wasn't me, that was the folks I just listed. We're really, really excited about this. We are working on connections south down towards Richmond, connections north up towards White Oak Bio and that trail system, and connections west towards Uptown. So that's exciting. We also have more trail systems and more connectivity coming as part of the 10-year plan by 2028. A Southern Arc Trail, for example, will give more people access through the southern part of Memorial Drive. And our next big project will be Camp Logan, will be Memorial Groves, which honors those who served in Camp Logan, who served the war effort by participating in Camp Logan. This is a photograph of Camp Logan, and this place will be sacred. This place will be very special, a place for learning, a place for reflection, a place for school groups. And so we don't have the specific time frame, but sometime between now and 2028, we're really excited about this project. And then finally, we celebrate our birthday. Memorial Park's 100th birthday starts next year. It is next year. It actually took 10 years to establish the entire park. We're going to celebrate in 2024, which is the first year. And so put your party hats on and come to March 9th, the next biggest picnic in Texas birthday edition. And so we had the biggest picnic in Texas last February. And so we're going to have the birthday edition. So please mark your calendars, March 9th, and we'll look forward to seeing you there. And we really want to thank today's sponsors. We so appreciate you all, so appreciate all of you in the room, everything you do for us. And I'll happily take questions on the side, but enjoy your day today. And thank you for being here this morning. Thank you to our project partners. Thank you to my former board member, Carrie Pepe, and current board member, Veronica Chapo-Grzinski, our board members, our staff. Thank you for putting this on today. Appreciate you, and have a great day today. Make it a special one.